You want the short answer? Maybe. You want the long answer? Well, that's what you're here for. Thank you to our $5 patrons Redwolf4765, Midnight Gemlord, and Sean. And another thank you to our $3 members Recliner Plays and Redwolf4765. And another very big thank you to our $10 patron Robbie Uchiha. And a very big thank you to our $25 patron Alex Ice Rose. Another very big thank you to our $25 member Alex Ice Rose. Now, we have this breakdown / discussion and analysis on whether or not Yuta Okkotsu, the Blessed One, was holding back within the Sendai Colony. Please do here and leave your own thoughts in the comment section down below. Leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, hit that little notification bell so you miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do a Patreon below where you can support me for as low as $1 a month to get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Now, let's hop into the discussion. What's up, guys? Pencil here, and yes, a major topic of contention for Yuta, and a major way that many attempt to save his scaling after Ryu got let's say he got 3-pieced no drink with a Popeye's biscuit, if you know what I'm talking about, is whether or not Yuta was holding back within the Sendai Colony, and what that could mean for his scaling in the future, and the hypothetical battles that he has left within the very rapidly approaching conclusion of Jujutsu Kaisen. So, the main point of a video like this is to determine whether or not Yuta has hope in reaching top 5, or realistically standing a chance against any of the high tiers, or breathing a whiff of a chance of anything in the big battles that are coming up, like against Kenjaku, like against Kenjaku's Mega Curse, if Ume is still around. And I think everyone and their mother knows that he's not doing anything to Sukuna, but hypothetically, let's say he fights alongside Gojo against Sukuna. Let's say we're doing this to specifically determine if Yuta at all has the stats required to properly pull up in a battle against deities, which is essentially what the ancient sorcerer trio is, and plus the hypothetical mega curse that Tengen will become after Kenjaku successfully does the merger. So, those are 4 major threats, and Gojo, while being Gojo, 4 major, well, we know Ume is not a major threat to Gojo, but we know there are major threats. There are going to be other things to take care of. Gojo's not going to show up and solo the narrative, obviously, even though maybe he could. With that being the case, we know that there are other people that need to be fought, and Yuta's going to have to be put there. However, we got to know, can Yuta even stand amongst them? And if he can't, what are the other characters going to do? So let's talk about Sendai. Number 1, there's a big misconception about Sendai, and that conception is that Yuta 1v3'd everybody there, and he didn't. Like, Sendai is the ultimate definition of a free-for-all, aka, yeah, everyone was throwing hands, but like they were all throwing hands at each other. Remember, Yuta figured out that, oh, wait a second, Ishigori's blast damaged Ishigori because Uro threw a blast right at Ishigori's face. Remember, Uro only was put in a situation where Yuta could beat her and like knock her down for the fact that they all opened domain after Ryu did, and Yuta took an opportunity when he saw it. And then Kuroushi capitalized on that opportunity even more. Uro wasn't even taken out by Yuta. Then you have Kuroushi, who was low-key kind of pressing Yuta. Those were the only 2 that had like a true, genuine one-on-one, at least the first incarnation of Kuroushi. And low-key, Yuta's kind of getting pieced up, but regardless, we need to determine whether or not Yuta was holding back. And I guess the main quantification is, what do we mean by holding back? Because there are a couple ways you can hold back. Number 1, you can hold back your stats. We see this in battles like Megami versus Sukuna. We see very clearly that if Sukuna wanted to, he could have easily one-shot and annihilated Megami. That's just like that. We see this in battles, ironically enough, a lot of battles with Sukuna now I think about it. But we see this with Sukuna versus Ryu. At first, he was suppressed. He just threw a single slash at Ryu, and Ryu ate that. And then Sukuna was like, oh, wait a second, hold on, let me turn on the juice a little bit. And then he one-shot Ryu. We see this with Sukuna up against Mahoraga, where at first he was like, hold on, let me play with you a little bit. Boom, hold that. He was like, oh, wait a second, you're actually kind of strong a little bit. Let me open this domain on you, and let me put a flame arrow out. that's obviously another case where Sukuna was holding back. And Sukuna versus Jogo, where Sukuna was very clearly holding back because based on how badly he was styling on Jogo, he could have casually one-shot him at any moment, most likely with a punch. So we've seen a lot that you can hold back your raw stats, or else you would like casually one-shot people. The clearest example is Ryu, who we literally see Sukuna suppress his stats on, then not suppress his stats on, and Ryu gets one shot. Bada bing, bada boom. Then there's holding back your slaying intent, aka you are going all out, you're pulling out all your stats and abilities. It's just that like you aren't actually trying to execute your opponent, and that is the type that we see in battles like Itadori versus Higuruma, Itadori versus Todo, where characters are like using all their abilities but not necessarily trying to like execute you. There is no reason for Itadori to try and slay Todo or Itadori to try and slay Higuruma, especially when he needed their points. Another case of this can definitely be argued as Kashimo versus Hakari, where Hakari was clearly trying to not execute Kashimo, but was seemingly using all of his strength, while Kashimo was definitely trying to execute Hakari. And I argue that the same case is with something like Yuta in the Sendai free-for-all. And here's why. Number one, we know for a fact that Yuta literally cannot fight them while suppressed. He needs to pull out Rika. He needs to pull out that 5-minute sauce on him in order to survive this battle. So he already says verbatim, Rika, give me everything. And he pulls out literally everything. Like he grabs cursed tools, he yanks that out from Rika, he pulls out fully manifested Rika, and he starts getting to work. So obviously a base Yuta, which is the best argument for like a suppressed Yuta, you know, a Yuta without fully manifested Rika, is not enough to handle the Sendai monsters. Legitimately, both of them actually kind of bully Yuta in base. If you go and reread the fight, you see that a base Yuta doesn't actually land a hit on either of them that does any significant damage or anything important. In base, after fighting Kurushi, he doesn't land a single hit on Uro. She casually blocks all of his attacks, blows him away, and or redirects all of his attacks, and she only does damage to him and force him back. Notably, the damage isn't all too extreme until she hits him with a thin ice missile, but still, the fact that he doesn't do any damage in base implies that base Yuta is just simply not enough for even Uro alone. And we even see this continues once he starts to go and deal with Ishigori. He doesn't land a single hit on Ishigori. They start exchanging hands, exchanging fisticuffs, but the only one to actually take any damage is Yuta, and Yuta even straight up admits his output's high and releases cursed energy with near instantaneous explosiveness. His movements are fast and precise, and if I don't guard well, even I take damage. And while we do see that Ishigori does admit, he supports his toughness with his cursed energy. It's like I'm knocking against a massive water tank. He doesn't actually say Yuta's any sort of threat. And you even see that right after this exchange where they both acknowledge each other, Ryu sends base Yuta flying, like drastically away. And then Ryu chases, launched a granite blast, vaporized Yuta's hand, and then Yuta tries to hit Ryu, but Ryu quickly launches off another blast that chars Yuta's hand all over again, and then proceeds to send Yuta flying, once again Ryu having taken absolutely no damage in their base interaction. And then base Yuta proceeds to get thin icebreaker to the back, and then bada bing bada boom, Yuta gets sent flying into another building, once again not having done any damage to either of his combatants. One thing I will give base Yuta though is that Kurushi did press him. Kurushi did catch him off guard and force Yuta to use things like RCT to even just defeat him, not to talk of heal off all the damage that Kurushi did. And also, I will give the fact that Yuta was, presumably, if you think he got all 35 points in the same day, he did fight literally 7 sorcerers before Kurushi. So bro probably was pulling up just a bit fatigued, though admittedly it seems like none of the 7 sorcerers that he beat like actually did any damage to him. Like notably the only damage we see on Yuta before the Kurushi fight is Dru's blood, not even Yuta's. So when faced with Uro and Ryu, he realizes that he can't actually do any damage to them, and the only damage that Ryu even takes is from his own attack that's thrown at him by Uro. And then Yuta realizes that, oh, I cannot beat these two while holding back. I need Rika. Hold on, Rika, give me everything. And he slides that ring on. So obviously, I think this pretty clearly points out that base Yuta does not scale at all to like Ryu or Uro. Maybe in speed, maybe a little bit of relativity in speed because they do exchange some blows, but at least in terms of attack potency and raw power, he doesn't scale in base. So a base Yuta cannot beat Ryu or Uro. No technique, no nothing, just RCT in hands, or maybe a blade if he had one. He couldn't do anything. And that's pretty important to note, Because I need you to remember Yuta's goal here within Sendai. He needs to either A, execute every single sorcerer that he can so he can reach his 400 point goal, or he needs to instantly subdue them quickly enough to get their points. Either one. At first, you see that he doesn't have access to the second option because it seems like Itadori did not beat Higuruma yet, and only somewhere in the midst of the Sendai fight or sometime right after is when Itadori added the rule that allowed the point transfer, and that's why Yuta spares them after he manages to survive the free-for-all. But upwards to that point, he would have the intention to execute these individuals because he can't take their points. So he just needs to get to 100 points and add the rule himself. So he was trying to beat down Uro and beat down Ryu. It's just that he failed in base. So base Yuta doesn't scale to these guys. He doesn't damage him. He doesn't land a hit. They either fisticuff him down and or just like absolutely send him flying and char his body parts and force him to use RCT. So Yuta in base does not have the stats required to take down these two. And this is presumably a Yuta going all out. Once again, we see how he deals with Kuroushi. He wants to take down Kuroushi violently. And you even see him do it when he becomes Yuta the Curse Kisser all over again and shoves his lips all over Kuroushi's. And then bada bing bada boom detonates their brain. So we see that Yuta does in fact have slaying intent. Bro is out here. So a base Yuta cannot be argued for holding back. Unless you want to say that base Yuta for some reason was like, yeah, you know, I could just blitz and one-shot you, but I'm not going to because reasons? Like I literally can't even think of a reason why base Yuta, if he could take them out instantaneously, why he wouldn't. You know what I'm saying? Like we see someone who can take out a Ryu level fighter instantaneously. And that guy's Sukuna. And like he took out Ryu instantaneously. And we know for a fact that if Yuta could have just instantly subdued them, let's say hypothetically, Yuta only went bloodlusted against Kuroushi, drew all the previous sorcerers he slayed in that day, and one-shot them all because, you know, they were just unreasonable creatures. They just couldn't speak English or whatever language, or they couldn't speak Japanese, the one language that Yuta was speaking, and thusly he was like, fine, I'll just slay you all. And he did. Which means that Yuta in base should have stats above all the people that he did slay, meaning that Yuta, while not holding back, can execute people relatively quickly. We see he beat Dhruv with no damage, but when he can't do that, he struggles, he loses, even when going all out, which presumably he was doing. He wouldn't have bottomed out of his cursed energy reserves, as we see Uro and Ryu note, and he wouldn't have fought directly or leap directly to taking Rika out to fight them if he didn't have to. If Yuta had the stats to one-shot, bully, and blitz and body bag Ryu and Uro, like Sukuna one-shot, bullied, and body bagged Ryu, he would have done so. But, you know, obviously, people may not be arguing that it was base Yuta who was not holding back. Like, maybe people believe that, you know, yeah, sure, base Yuta, he was going all out, but base Yuta and full power Yuta are different. They're entirely different beasts. Full power Yuta is a monster, and that's why he was the one holding back. But even then, I don't necessarily agree. Number one, obviously, you have the major statement of Yuta being like, Rika, give me everything, which implies that, like, he doesn't think he could beat these two with only some of it, or like a little bit of it, or like a partially manifested Rika. No, he thinks he needs to immediately leap to full Rika to take these two out. And presuming full power Yuta is in fact full power Yuta, he would not be holding back here. But once again, you know, maybe Yuta's just a liar. I don't know where this idea that Yuta's just this like unbelievable lying human being has come from. He seems like a guy who wouldn't lie. But you know, let's just say Yuta's lying and Rika doesn't actually give him everything. Let's actually review the fight from here on out. We see that once Yuta activates his full power, he immediately goes for Uro first. He tries to catch her off guard. He gets a gauntlet equipped by Rika, and then catches Uro off guard by using Cursed Speech. This is the first time Yuta has even used the technique, and decides that the first move is going to be Cursed Speech, while Uro's view is mostly blocked by the gigantic Shikigami charging at her. And since Uro's caught off guard, she has her guard lowered, and proceeds to get absolutely body bagged and bullied by Rika and Yuta. However, in spite of this, we see that Uro actually manages to eat the double team. Like, she doesn't even get knocked out from this or subdued, which, if you want to argue that Yuta's holding back, that should be his main goal. But Yuta should be more than wise enough to know that it wouldn't be a good idea to keep her in the fight. This is like the perfect scenario to take her out. She's caught off guard by Cursed Speech. If he could just knock her out here with his super insane full power stats, or even a suppressed stats, he would have. But he fails to, even after double teaming her directly with Rika, an extremely powerful Shikigami. Powerful enough that when Yuta gets sent over to continue fighting Uro since he could not beat Uro directly in that one confrontation. We see that Ryu launches a granite blast directly at the duo, and then Rika manages to block it with only a couple scratches, not her hand actually being charred. And then Rika absolutely punches Ryu across the face and is the first one to actually do any real major damage to Ryu outside of his major attacks, which is something that Yuta could not do. Once again, you see it earlier on in their first interaction with base Yuta, and you'll see it again at the end of the fight. Base Yuta, or Yuta even with full cursed energy reserves, fully topped off, should and could not be able to damage Ryu. Ryu always needs to be damaged either by Rika, either by a Duraneg space manipulation attack like Thin Icebreaker, or by his own attacks. Yuta never does any real damage to Ryu. And Ryu even proceeds to fully knock away and punch this fully manifested Rika in the face, which implies that he's still relative, if not directly above her, considering he got sent flying a little bit across the roof, but before Rika could even wombo combo him like she tried to, she got knocked into another building, and you even see the two have fisticuffs later. However, cutting back to the battle between Yuta and Uro, this is a Yuta that reserves are confirmed to have fully welled back up. This is a full power, boundless cursed energy Yuta who's constantly getting energy from Rika. And Yuta, once again, proving that he can wombo combo like crazy, begins to pull out Daru's technique. And we see that when Uro, once again, gets caught off guard by, one, not knowing Yuta's technique, and two, having her cursed technique shut down and being attacked by Yuta's new little mini Shikigami, Yuta lands a direct hit on Uro, straight to the gut, sends her flying, but even still, he's not able to take her out. Why? Once again, I need to ask you, if Yuta could defeat Uro in any of these interactions with one hit, two hit, red hit, blue hit, why wouldn't he? Why would he be suppressing himself and making the battle go on even longer and make it more difficult if a hypothetical full power Yuta, if he's not going all out here, could have just one-shotted her? What's the reason? Can you provide one? Because personally, I can't think of one. There's no reason for Yuta to be holding back here. And we even see that Uro, despite after getting wombo comboed by Rika and Yuta, being wombo comboed into having her technique shut down again, well, not necessarily again, but getting her technique shut down and being punched dead in the gut by a gauntlet and Yuta, which should, we don't know any quantification for this gauntlet, but a cursed tool should make him stronger. We see Uro is still in enough good shape without any RCT, without any healing or anything, while being extremely damaged to still casually stop Yuta's attack. And notably, I'm not sure what she actually breaks the gauntlet with. I think this may be a thin ice breaker, like maybe, but it has a different effect to it, so I'm not exactly sure. Like, I have no idea what he hits her with here, or what she hits him with here. It looks like a thin icebreaker because it has the shattering effects, but still, the fact that Earl is able to react and shatter Yuta's gauntlet, and Yuta once again is able to just brute force her here into a knockout, doesn't make any sense. If he should be able to body bag her, he should be able to body bag her. And we do get to see that maybe, I can hypothetically see an argument for the idea that maybe Yuta's holding back through the idea that he's like actually having a conversation with her. But like, if he could just one-shot her, he wouldn't need to have this conversation in the first place. So that still doesn't even make any sense. And we do get to see that in the background, yeah, Ryu is fighting on even grounds with Rika, who is stronger than Yuta. So even still, a hypothetical, and like, why would Rika hold back? Like, I get maybe Yuta holding back, but why would Rika hold back? These people are threats to Yuta. We see the last thing she did to a threat to Yuta. Ghetto, rest in peace. And we also see another time that someone was trying to kind of sort of harm Yuta, and that was Itadori. You know what happened to him? Bro got restrained and no diff. So why would Rika hold back? Why would Yuta be holding back in this scenario? Please tell me if you can manifest a reason. And then, of course, you know, my boy Ryu, he starts banging that chest. I don't know where Rika goes in this interaction, though, because you literally see the two having fisticuffs in the background, but somehow Ryu gets freedom enough from Rika to start Ryoki Senkai, and we have the triple domain expansion. Now, note, I want you to remember, Yuta is going into this domain clash with topped off cursed energy. Bro is literally topped off, because he has direct link to all the stored cursed energy within Rika. So he is always topped off throughout this entire fight when he has Rika fully manifested. So we already have Uro having spammed her technique of sky manipulation and multiple thin icebreakers, and we have Ryu who's fired multiple granite blasts and had multiple interactions at this point, eating his own attacks. These guys are already running lower on cursed energy, but Yuta, who's consistently topped off, is consistently topped off. And we do get to see that they all open their domains. And we know domains take up a massive, a hefty amount of cursed energy. Unless your name's Yuta Okkotsu and or Gojo Satoru and or Sukuna. Like all those three seem to be just fine after domain, especially a full power Yuta who once again is getting direct slop from Rika. And this is hypothetically on next level for Rika. After seeing Yuta get trapped in domain, she opens up that big ol' eye on her forehead and she levels up. And then of course Kuroushi has to come in and ruin the fun and collapse the triple domain, which is already unstable, and bada bing bada boom, the 4 fighters of Sendai return to standard. However, we gotta realize this is not actually a return to standard. Both Ryu and Uro have been spamming their techniques up to this point, and we see that both Ryu and Uro's techniques have not refreshed. We see Uro is fully in flesh form, meaning that she is back to regular. And Yuta, being Yuta, who is still once again topped off immediately because full power Rika is manifested, and we know once Rika gives him everything, he has max strength. Yuta pulls up on this cursed techniqueless Uro and drops her with a hit straight to the back of the head. But guess what? Even after letting a straight kick to the back of her dome piece, when she's once again mostly off guard as she's dealing directly with Kuroushi, the narrator goes out of its way to mention that Kuroushi distracted Uro, whom she considered a particularly nasty opponent. So Uro is 100% not focusing on Yuta here. Yuta drop kicks the back of her dome piece, and she still manages to stay conscious. Once again, I ask you why Yuta would be holding back here and not wanting to knock out Uro here. And we see that Kuroushi comes in and cleans up Uro. So Yuta himself doesn't even get the dub on Uro. It's mainly Kuroushi who comes in, and then Rika comes in and goes, no. And actually, now I look at it, I thought hypothetically Rika ripped the arm off Uro, but after rereading it, no, Rika didn't even rip the arm off of Uro. It was Kuroushi's bugs exploding out her gut, well, not her guts, but exploding out her arm that tore off Uro's arm. So once again, you know, Rika plus Yuta with a full wombo combo, post the domain, plus an off-guard kick to the back of the head, plus the off-guard lacking with not knowing what Yuta's curse technique is. All that in combination, and Yuta still doesn't beat Uro. Like, all that and Uro is still conscious. So why is Yuta holding back? Why is Yuta holding back if he should want to either A, execute this woman, or B, just instantly subdue her? I still don't see a reason to. And then we get to see that as Uro gets mad, because, you know, Fujiwara, I don't know why she gets mad at him, though. I mean, I guess because he drop-kicked her while she was focusing on Kuroushi, but the main one she should be mad at is Kuroushi, because the arm's gone. And we do get to see, with that being the case, Ryu is the one to finish off Uro. And even then, Ryu doesn't actually, like, really finish her off, but Ryu knocks her out. After a domain, multiple technique spamming, getting caught off guard multiple times, getting wombo comboed, that's what takes out Uro. A granite blast, you know, the highest output in the entire verse. Though admittedly it's softened up a little bit, as confirmed later. That's probably why Uro doesn't get vaporized, but knocked out here. And then, you know, Kuroushi, another opponent Yuta was fighting, caught a stray from the granite blast, and then Yuta finishes Kuroushi off. So once again, base Yuta could not handle Kuroushi well. He needed to RCT, something he didn't want to do, so he couldn't beat Kuroushi while 100% suppressed. He needed to whip out that RCT, so full power base Yuta doesn't scale. Then full power base Yuta, as we see, well, maybe not full power, he's a little bit sweepy, he's a little bit tired, he's a little bit drained, also does absolutely no damage to Ryu or Uro throughout their entire encounter, and is forced to have Ryu and Kuroushi come back into the fight and take Uro out for him after failing to take out Uro from double jumping her. And then we get to see the final fight, which is Yuta and Rika versus Ryu. However, this is not a fresh Ryu. Need I remind you, this is a Ryu who ate his own attack, was forced into a battle one-on-one against Rika, who's proven herself relative to him. Also, while for no reason, having no reason to be holding back, Rika does not seem like a character intelligent enough to hold back. It seems like she legit was trying to get rid of Ryu, but she just couldn't. Meanwhile, we know a certain character who tried to get rid of Ryu and casually succeeded. So we know that Rika, even at top power, is not enough for Ryu. And how do we know that Rika at top power is not enough for Ryu? Because we see that Rika and Yuta, a wombo combo, a double team, if you will, prepare. And what does the narrator directly say? Yuta Okkotsu can only release a directed high power output blast of cursed energy while Rika is completely manifested. Even at full power, it is slightly weaker than Ishigori's blast, so he needed to rapidly build up cursed energy and fire before his opponent reached maximum power. So, hear that. This is full power. This is the narrator himself slapping his meat on the table and being like, listen here. Yuta can only release a directed high output blast of cursed energy while Rika is completely manifested. Even at full power, it is slightly weaker than Ishigori's blast. Meaning that Yuta, at full power, mind you, does not have the capability to one-shot Ryu at all, even when not holding back. This is the most blatant full power in the entire fight. Let's say you make some sort of mystical, magical argument that Yuta was holding back for the rest of the battle. He wasn't, but let's say you do. This is verbatim stated by the narrator. This isn't from Yuta's biased mouth. This isn't anything. Yuta can't lie to you here. Yuta's not speaking. This isn't his thought process. This is the narrator himself being like, hey, yo, Yuta at full power ain't like that. He's beneath Ryu and he cannot one-shot him. So Yuta going full power, not above Ryu at all. We've got this. We've got this manifested. All right. Nice and good. Let's continue through the rest of the fight. We do get to see that Yuta, after seeing the intense look in Ishigori's eyes, over 400 years of hunger and thirst, though he probably hoped to never find meaning in fighting, Ishigori's gaze melted Yuta Okkotsu's heart. So the two have their blast, their double wombo combo, and we see that Yuta is struggling against Ryu, but just in fact, Ryu wins. We see that Yuta has his blast pierced absolutely through. So his highest output full power blast gets pierced straight through by Ryu's weakened granite blast, by the way. Ryu's technique had not replenished at this point, so this full power, highest output blast that a full power Yuta, because once again he's topped off by Rika, is a full power Yuta. His blast that he can only do with fully manifested Rika, this is literally the peak of his power, gets pierced straight on through by Ryu's weakened granite blast. And we do get to see that Rika, and this is full power Rika, this is the same Rika that had the eye open up against Geto after a year of training and amps of who knows what happened off screen. This is the same Rika that beat Geto in a cursed energy clash, and we see that this Rika fires a blast at Ryu, and Ryu doesn't have time to launch off a granite blast to contest it and destroy this beam too. But you know what Ryu does? Takes this full power blast of Rika, he palms it, and I want you to realize he palms it even better than Yuta palmed his blast, because his hand doesn't get vaporized here. It gets a couple scuff marks on it, like his own granite blast did to Rika at first. And we see that he takes the one granite blast and fires it at Yuta. And then Yuta, knowing that he cannot do any damage to Ryu, we've seen it many a time before, Yuta cannot do any damage to Ryu with his regular attacks. He only has 3 notable exceptions where he can actually damage Ryu. He pulls out space manipulation, using his curse technique that had replenished to redirect Ryu's likely full power blast, now that his technique is likely replenished at this point, to redirect Ryu's attack. And then we get to see that since Ryu's caught off guard here, he's like, wait, what? And then he immediately gets thin icebreakered to the gut. And I want you to remember, thin icebreaker, as noted by Yuta himself, is not a conventional attack. He doesn't even know how it works at first. He's like, this did a whole bunch of extra damage. This is crazy. And we know why that this actually does damage to Ryu, and it causes him to spit up some of that good old life juice, is because of the fact that it's a spatial manipulation attack. It bypasses your conventional durability and attacks probably straight at your guts, and immediately does a whole bunch of damage to Ryu. And then Rika, being about that life, wastes no time in wombo comboing Ryu and slamming his dome piece. But we see that this slam, this double hit, this wombo combo, if you will, still isn't enough to take down Ryu. And Ryu is once again fighting a full power topped off Yuta. I gotta remind you, Yuta consistently has his cursed energy supply topped off when fully manifested Rika is out, and he still has access to fully manifested Rika at this point. And we know Ryu has taken a whole bunch of damage, used domain, fired off numerous granite blasts, so bro is extremely tired and fatigued here. Meanwhile, Yuta is topped off like it's the start of the morning. And then Ryu immediately responds after eating this hit from Rika and Yuta, who just used a spatial manipulation attack to directly bypass Ryu's durability. Ryu still just grins with blood pouring down his head and smacks, admittedly, an unmanifested Rika. So now Yuta has lost the access to his full cursed energy supply and his technique. So this is back to base Yuta, and I need to remind you, this is a base Yuta who is still topped off. He is slopped off by Rika. He got that last little bit of cursed Za from Rika, and he is at full juice. And once again, he is trying to defeat Ryu. You see, he starts kicking, punching, slobber knocking. But even still, you can see throughout this entire little interaction that they have before the granite blast comes back down that Ryu still is managing to hold his own against this fully fresh, top-of-the-line Yuta here. And then Yuta manages to grab this super-duper fatigued Ryu and drop a Granite Blast on his dome piece because it's Ryu's own likely full-power Granite Blast. And that manages to defeat Ryu in the end. That's it. So, let me recap. Base Yuta seemingly has done no damage and has no real direct scaling to either Ryu or Uro because he doesn't do any damage to them and they kind of just style on him. Full power Yuta, the one with direct access to fully manifested Rika, also still cannot easily blitz or one-shot either of these characters, even though it is fully within character for him to do that based on how we've seen him handle Druve and likely 7 other sorcerers before Druve. We know that there is no point in this battle, as stated by the narrator itself, that Yuta's full power blast, his full power output, could even come close. Well, it can come close. It is slightly weaker than Ryu's, but still, it is not enough. It is definitively weaker than Ryu's. Yuta's full power is blatantly lower than Ryu's, which implies, and is shown clearly throughout their entire fight, that Yuta could have not beaten Ryu in terms of raw output. And I quote once again, Yuta can only release a directed high output blast of cursed energy while Rika is fully manifested. Even at full power, it is slightly weaker than Ishigori's blast, so he needed to rapidly build up cursed energy and fire before his opponent reached maximum power. And we see that even with that, even with him firing off that maximum cursed Za directly at Ryu, a weakened Granite Blast still tears right on through Yuta's attack. So, full power Yuta was not holding back. I don't know how to tell it to you. Bro had to whip out literally every cursed technique in his arsenal to just barely pull out a dub against people who were either directly equal to him, which is what I believe Uro is, by tanking multiple hits from Rika and Yuta at the same time while Yuta was wearing an enhanced gauntlet that probably put a little bit of more meat behind his punches, and he also had to get them to waste a lot of their cursed energy on a triple domain clash that went nowhere, and he still needs to use Ryu's own attacks to actually beat Ryu, because Yuta himself could never damage Ryu, because even his highest output full power blast couldn't damage Ryu. So hypothetically, even if Yuta were to stand there and charge up his highest output blast of cursed energy, and Ryu was to hold his palm out, he just palm it casually, because he's able to palm full power awakened Rika blasts that were able to overpower maximum Uzumaki's. So Yuta at his full power still is not enough to one-shot blitz and body bag Ryu like Sukuna did. Yuta was going all out in Sendai. There's nothing else he can pull out stat-wise. We know his highest output falls beneath Ryu. And he still, when swinging, presumably at full force to either execute or subdue Ryu and Uro, could not do it. Even when he was topped off, he had to get them to burn all their cursed Za before they got defeated, usually by external means. Yuta himself, not enough. He just simply wasn't enough. Yuta does not have the stats in his back pocket to pull out and one-shot these two, or else he would have done it. Like, I just went through an entire run of the whole fight. I've been bringing up this point here and there, but I need to ask you legitimately, Yuta fans, think about it. If Yuta could have chosoed Ryu and Uro, why didn't he? And you know exactly what I mean. Remember when we saw Yuta completely being dominant and holding nothing back against his opponent? Well, even still, he was probably holding back against Choso. Do you know what happened when Yuta could casually one-shot and body bag his opponents? He chosos them. Choso, this high-level warrior, this high grade 1 level threat, able to beat Shibuya Yuji in a one-on-one, even when in an unfavorable situation. Yuta just casually one-shot, body bag that man. If he could do that to Ryu and Uro, he would have, but he couldn't. He could not casually do that. And we know in character, Yuta, if he can one-shot you, he will one-shot you. If Yuta can bully you, he will bully you. I do not see an argument to say that Yuta was holding back. The only thing I could hypothetically see is that Yuta was holding back from executing them, but was he really? Was he really? Like, do you really hit people with a wombo combo of you and your super strong Shikigami if you aren't trying to execute them? Do you really hit people with their own attacks, a spatial manipulation attack to their gut, and then wombo combo them again with your super strong Shikigami after you spatial manipulation Duraneg them? Do you really? And even then, once again, we know that Yuta did not try to talk to. He did not try to have a conversation with. He did not try to hold back on any other sorcerer he was running into. This is the same man who said himself verbatim in his own dome piece, yeah, I'm about to go out. I'm about to go all out. I'm about to get these 400 points myself. I'm going to defeat Kenjaku myself. I'm going to be him. So he's out here with that Mamba mentality and still couldn't take down Ryu and Uro with any sort of ease. Bro had to go all out. Bro had to pull out every technique that we know he has in his arsenal. Bro pulled out 2 techniques he learned the very same day. One of the techniques that he learned within that very same free-for-all. Like, legitimately, he pulled out sky manipulation after seeing it for the first time a solid 5 minutes ago. Bro really was pressed. And that's the thing. He was pressed. He had to go all out. He had to pull out. The narrator himself, like, that's the thing. Everything is leaning towards Yuta going all out. Everything is leading to that. Yuta's own mentality going into the fight. Yuta's previous examples of showing how he would treat people he could one-shot if he could one-shot them. Everything. Nothing implied. Base Yuta doing absolutely no damage to his 2 free-for-all opponents that weren't like random special grade curse fodder, like Kuroshi. Like, bro really was just put in a real rough spot, and that's okay. It's okay that Yuta is just struggling against these monsters in peace. Once again, these are warriors that are ancient sorcerers that are monsters and beasts themselves. Uro was the leader of a guardian squad within the Heian era, a monster, a beast. Ryu, the man with the highest cursed energy output in all the Culling games, a monster, a beast. It's okay that Yuta had to go all out, and I think the main reason people don't want to say that Yuta went all out in this fight is because they want to have hope. They want to have hope that Yuta isn't fodder. Because admittedly, I saw the stocks fall. I was there. I was present. When chapter 216 dropped, I saw the Yuta stocks fall. Because Ryu, an opponent that Yuta couldn't even damage in base, and an opponent that Yuta couldn't really even damage without spatial manipulation Duraneg at full power, got one shot by Sukuna. 15 finger, not even full power Sukuna. If that isn't a blatant example of someone being able to one-shot and body bag Ryu versus someone who isn't, I don't know what is. And no, I just made a whole video talking about why Yuta was going all out and why he's just not up there with the top dogs anymore because, he was struggling against someone who got one shot by a not full power top dog. But even still, I am a Yuta fan. So I understand trying to huff the copium for him, but I just don't think there's any copium anymore. Like, I think the tank is empty. Trust me. Now I'm huffing copium for, like, everybody. You just join the rest of the cast in terms of, like, we gotta straight huff it. Because I have no idea what Yuta's gonna do now. If he's really, like, running around this far. Sure, he should now have access to Angel's technique. He should have more sauce than he did before. So I do have faith in Yuta. Yuta can definitely pull things out. And note, I think that he went all out during the Sendai fight. But does that mean that Gege can not come out tomorrow and say that Yuta's actually secretly the second strongest in the verse, and in reality that he was just going at 10% by the Sendai fight? Like, sure, he can do that tomorrow. It's just that by what the narrative has given me, by what the narrator has told me about Yuta's full power, and by what the fight has shown with Yuta being pushed to his limits, needing to improvise and plan on a high level because he realized he cannot damage his 2 opponents or cannot beat them without extremely sneaky and or extremely fortunate in his favor means, I just think that it's a rough stuff. Yuta just ain't at that level where he could casually one-shot these 2, or else he would have. At least that's my view. I don't think Yuta was holding back in Sendai Colony. I think, in fact, he was pushed to his limits, and Yuta's going to need to undergo some sort of evolution in order to be relevant in these final major battles against these top-tier threats. I don't think Yuta beats Kenjaku. I don't think Yuta beats Sukuna. I don't think Yuta touches Gojo's toes, being completely honest with you. Who knows? Uru may be able to give him a good fight. But with that being the case, those are my thoughts. Please make your thoughts in the comment section down below. Do you think after all this that Yuta was still holding back? And if so, why? Do you think it's in character? Do you think there's some reason that I missed? Please let me know all that and more in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure the notifications also miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, you have a Patreon below. Each one Frizzle as $1 $1 down month to get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel Frizzle as 3 as month to get the same perks and more. Now, thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Dago the Pencil, writing off.